Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of College Hockey Talk. On today's podcast, we are joined by freshman from the Dartmouth women's hockey team, Vanessa Stamper. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, Vanessa, and how's everything going?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much, like I said, for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it. Now, obviously, your team just started the second half of your season at the time of this recording. So, how would you evaluate your team's performance as of now?
Um, well, obviously, we aren't like too satisfied with our record and our standing, but I think we have shown to other teams that we aren't a team that you should take lightly. We have had close one goal games with top 10 teams in the country like Quinnipiac, Colgate, Cornell. So like we're definitely there. It's just I think we need to capitalize like on our power plays and opportunities we get and maybe stay out of the box a little bit more and we could have won some of these games.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I think your record doesn't really indicate how well your team has played because there's been so many tight games for that your team has played so far this year. And one thing about your team that I've noticed is you guys play much better on the road versus at home. I'm curious, how do you think you should improve your road record? Like, what goes into that, or is it just something that just comes naturally? And what's your key for your team's success on the road, if there is any?
I think our key to success during road games is just having that there's nothing to lose mentality. Like, let's go into their barn and upset them in their home. And now we just kind of have to like reverse that mentality when we do play at home and take pride in being able to wear the Dartmouth jersey in the historic Thompson Arena.
Which rink is your favorite road rink to play in so far?
Um, I have two. I really liked St. Lawrence. I just really like the vibes in there. I like their like screen and it's I feel like it's pretty easy to pack their barn and stuff and just like the dark wood finishes. It's just really beautiful. But then I also loved Quinnipiac's rink because it's just the facility is just so nice. It's very like updated and modern. So I think those are my top two for sure.
Yeah, St. Lawrence has like that old school type of vibe barn,
Yeah.
and then Quinnipiac is like the new school type of vibe barn. Both I
Yeah.
like. There's things I like about both, so I totally get where you're coming from
Exactly.
on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously, being a freshman this year, there's probably a lot of your game that you've had to adjust to in college hockey, and we'll obviously get to that in a second. But what do you think is the biggest improvement you've made to your game this year?
Um, I think for me, it was my confidence. Because at the start of the year, obviously, it's intimidating as a freshman coming in, but then you realize, like, oh, this isn't so bad. Like, I'm fully capable. Like, I am here for a reason. And so I think it's just, yeah, growing my confidence and being more confident in my ability to play and like keep up with all these great players that I'm going up against.
How do you build up confidence? I'm curious about that because I feel like confidence is something that is hard to gain, but it's so easy to lose. Yet it's so important for a college hockey athlete because I feel like players that play with more confidence tend to play better. So I'm curious how you work on that.
Um, Really, I think it's just like all a mind game. It doesn't really necessarily have to do with like your physical ability. Like if you tell yourself, I'm going into this game, like I'm gonna do the best I can, whatever the outcome. And like in this like a smaller picture, like, oh, I'm going to win this 50-50 battle, like just telling yourself that. And then you'd be surprised like how often like telling yourself that like it'll happen.
hmm And obviously, you play in the ECAC. So talk about what it's like playing in the ECAC this year and just the competition that you face every weekend because it's arguably the deepest conference. I'm in women's college hockey this year. I was looking at the pairwise a few days ago, and since the tournament size is so small, only like 11 teams get in, there's going to be a few really good ECAC teams that just don't make it because of that. So talk about what it's like playing in that conference and just how competitive each game and team is.
Yeah, it's definitely a battle every game. There's not one team that you can take lightly and go in with the mindset like, oh, we got this in the bag. Like that's never the case in the ECAC. And like you said, like it's probably one of the most competitive leagues in college hockey. Um, but there's a lot of like pride to be taken in that, like being able to play in this league.
Now, Obviously, we're talking about road arenas, but I'm curious what it's like playing in your home arena in Hanover. I think it's one of the coolest college hockey rinks in the country. I like the green seats. It sort of has a good mixture of old school and new school. I'm curious as a player what it's like playing in that rink every day, and just talk about what you like most about playing home games.
Yeah, playing in Thompson's definitely very surreal. Every time I walk into the rink or step on the ice, whether it's for a game or just open ice, just shooting pucks and stuff, like I'm just extremely grateful and genuinely just like happy to be there. I feel like even on my worst days when I step in the rink, it's like, wow, like, you know, this is awesome.
Now, talk about what's the biggest adjustment you've had to make to college hockey. Was it the speed of the game, physicality, or just the decision making that has to happen because the game is so fast?
Definitely a combo of all three of those things, but I think for me, it's definitely the mental quickness of the game, like knowing what you're going to do before you even get the puck, like scanning the ice, knowing your options because it moves so much quicker. So yeah.
And how do you think you've adjusted on that this year?
Um, I think I've done a decent job. Definitely like going back and watching video, you're like, oh, you should have done that. So, and I think that's just like an important part aspect of it is like going back and watching your games and like saying, oh, next time you know you have this option available. So it's definitely getting better as the season goes on.
So I now want to transition and talk about the beginning of your hockey career and kind of work all the way up to where you are today. So just doing research on yourself, it says that you're from Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. So talk about growing up there and how'd you start playing hockey?
I actually did not grow up in Bloomfield. I moved there like the beginning of my freshman year of high school, but I grew up on the east side of Michigan in this small town called Clinton Township. But I started playing hockey when I was, I think, 4 or 5 years old. I have an older brother, and he was playing, and so my dad just decided to throw me in a pair of skates and see how it went, and it's been history since then.
Who's your favorite player growing up? Was it someone on the Red Wings?
Yeah, it was Pavel Datsyuk. I wore number 13, and I just thought he was just so mesmerizing to watch. And whenever I would go to Joe Louis Arena and watch him play, it was just so surreal.
I'm curious if you tried any of his practice moves or just like a shootout moves in practice by any chance. I know a lot of people try to imitate them. I'm curious if you've had to at least attempted to try to imitate one of those moves by any chance.
Um, I'm sure I did when I was a little kid. I haven't yet this year during our practices, but that's a good idea. I might try one out our next shootout competition.
Yeah, there's been a few good ones. My favorite, honestly, my favorite Red Wings shootout move is Zetterberg's when he like puts the goalie on one side and then he uses his stick and with one hand just pokes it on the
Yeah,
other side of the net. That's like my favorite. I've always tried to try that, but it hasn't worked out so far.
yeah, same.
Now, before college hockey, you played for Little Caesars and BK Selects. Talk about your experience with both those teams and how you got the opportunity to play for them.
So I grew up playing boys hockey and I played a couple year of boys AAA before and then like they went into checking. So I moved to girls when I was like 12 or 13. That's when I went to Caesars and I was recruited by them and played there for 5 years, I think. Yeah, 5 years. And Little Caesars will always be so like important for me because it gave me some of my best friends to this day. I did a lot of like growing up there and like my leadership ability grew and like the Little Caesars gave me so many opportunities just like on tournaments and like playing for like such an elite organization and like their partnership with the Red Wings and when Little Caesars Arena was built and practicing there it was just so amazing. So I'll always be grateful for that. And then BK Selects was a it was like represent like a different time in my life like because I took a post grad year and that's why I went there and my little sister was there so I wanted to spend another year with her so it was a very like grounding experience because all my friends already went to college and I was like oh I'm still playing hockey but I was actually able to just focus on myself more, grow my game, and I met even more amazing friends and people, and I was able to take this like role as like a role model for like the younger kids and a part of the organization. So I'm also really grateful to Selects as well.
Yeah, talk about your transition from boys to girls hockey. Was it seamless or was it a little bit of an adjustment? I know you said you switched before checking what happened, so I'm assuming it wasn't that bad of a transition for you.
Um, no, it wasn't that bad of a transition at all. If anything, I was a little surprised by how this this sounds bad, but just like how like good the hockey still was because playing with boys and then there's a stigma like around girls hockey not being as good. But and so me like I went in all confident and stuff like, oh, I'm gonna be the best player on the team because I was at boys hockey. But in reality, I was surrounded by so many other amazing girls.
And obviously, what's your best memory from Little Caesars or BK Selects? Like when you look back on your junior hockey days, like what's one memory that sticks out to you the most?
Um, I think it's at Little Caesars my first year there. We uh won the state championship and my best friend scored the overtime winning goal and I remember all of us just rushing out on the ice and like jumping in this huge dog pile and it was like the first time that I felt like truly like accomplished and yeah.
That's awesome. Who was your best friend that scored? Give him a shout out.
That would be Morgan Knightsky. She plays for Lindenwood. She's a sophomore. So yeah, shout out to her.
Awesome, awesome. Well, talk about some of the players you did get to play with on Little Caesars and BK Selects because just doing research on both those programs, they've produced some of the most elite players in women's D1 college hockey. So I'm curious if you got to play with any of them by any chance.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to play with Alyssa Biederman, who's at Colgate, and she's killing it as a freshman. I played with Claire Yoon at BU, Casey Borgiel at Holy Cross, and then at Selects, I got to play with Layla Edwards, who's at Wisconsin. She was actually my roommate at Selects, and she's one of my best friends now. And I also played with Kendall Butsy at Penn State, Megan McKay at Mercyhurst. So just a lot of like great women that I was blessed to play with.
I've heard Layla Edwards is one of the funniest people ever. Is that true?
It is true. She is one of the funniest people ever, but she's like not like loud about it. She'll just make like subtle little comments that just have you dying of laughter all the time.
That's awesome. Now talk about your junior and travel hockey, the junior and travel hockey scene in the Midwest and what it's like being a player in that scene because I'm from the East Coast and most players go to prep school or juniors. So and not and same sort of it's sort of similar to the Midwest, but it's sort of a different vibe. I feel like I'm curious if it's a similar or different vibe than the East Coast and what it's like growing up and being in that scene.
Um, I think it's a lot, it's definitely a lot different from like Minnesota where they're playing high school hockey and even in the on the East Coast because everyone like they'll play for their club team like in the beginning, right? And then they'll play their winter season with their prep schools, but there's no prep schools or anything like that in like Michigan and the Midwest. So there was just like the basic teams like in Michigan you only had four teams, Little Caesars, Belle Tire, Honey Baked, and Meyer, which is now I believe Big B, I think. And then and then you had your competition in Chicago, which was like Team Illinois, CYA, and Mission, and then you got like Penn's Elite and stuff. So it was like a really niche group that you played, but the competition was just as good. But you had definitely had to like travel a lot more. But there was a lot of fun in that, and it was a huge commitment, but obviously it turned out to be great. So,
That's awesome. Yeah, what's like the farthest like travel bus ride you've had to do?
um, well, at Selects last year, we did, I think it was a 13-hour bus ride from back from, we played in Thanksgiving tournament in Nashville. We had a 13-hour ride back to Rochester, New York. So that is definitely the longest bus ride I've ever been on.
Any fun bus stories then? Because if you're on the bus for that long, there's gotta be some good ones.
Oh gosh. I really there's just like small little moments where someone will shout something out on the bus and everyone just starts laughing, but we did do like a silent karaoke thing one time.
Yeah.
My sister and I sang Baby by Justin Bieber, so that was pretty fun.
Did you just do Justin Bieber's part, or did you both have to do like Ludacris and Justin Bieber's part in the song?
Um, I did both Justin Bieber and Ludacris. She just did the chorus, just the
Oh,
baby part.
oh, that's good. That's not bad. I think that's a good way to split it up.
Yeah.
As long as everyone got a good laugh out of that, then it's
Yeah.
a fun memory to have.
No,
So
it was fun.
yeah, for sure. Did you get to pick the song, or did they have to choose it for you?
Oh no, we chose the song.
That's good. That's good. No, I'm a big Justin Bieber fan. We'll get into that in the non-hockey segment, but I don't think he's as bad as people think he is. So, um, getting back to some hockey questions now, I first want to ask, like, what was the recruitment process like to Dartmouth, and why did you choose to go there versus other schools you might have looked at? I know going to an Ivy League is a little bit different than just a regular school. And obviously, you said you had to take a post-grad year, so I'm curious how that whole recruiting process worked for yourself.
Yeah, so my commitment is kind of a funny story. It's definitely a very unique one. Growing up, my dream was always to go to an Ivy League school, and this wasn't even for hockey. Like I was just really committed to my academics, and it was, just my dream. Um, but uh, playing hockey like gave me like the opportunity for that, like increase my like ability to get in. But um so I actually was not going to go to college for hockey. I like after COVID, like a lot of things got messed up, obviously, like the recruitment and stuff, and the pool was so large and people like didn't know what was going to happen. And this was during my junior year. So then senior year came up and I was like, I didn't really have any offers on the table. And that was kind of hard to accept at first, but like I really also focused on my academics during high school. So I put myself like in a good place to also just get into college based on my academics. And so I just applied to a bunch of schools and I actually was accepted into Villanova and offered a scholarship. And I was still playing hockey at the time. This was when I was at Honey Baked. And people are like, "Oh, what are you gonna do?" And I was like, I like had to like make a decision soon because nothing was coming up and I was like so I actually committed to go to Villanova just for my academics. Um and then coach Liz T.D. Norton, my head coach, had just received the job at Dartmouth and um she this was in maybe like May of my senior year and she called me and she was like, Vanessa, I don't know what you're doing, but I really want you to come to Dartmouth. Like, I just got the job here and like we would love to have you there. And then my brother was actually getting married that weekend. It was like a Friday, I believe she called me. And I was like, my brother's getting married this weekend. Can I give you a call on Monday? And she's like, oh my gosh, yes, of course. Like, enjoy time with your family. And um, but then on Monday, like then the next week, I called her and I was like, yes, I would love to come to Dartmouth. Like, this is my dream. And so it was just, it all happened so like quickly. And yeah, so that's my commitment story.
That's probably the craziest commitment story I've ever heard. But how
Yeah.
did you switch? Like, I know once you go to a school, how do you switch from going to that school to another school? I know maybe athletics have something to do with that. I'm just curious.
Um, so I actually like literally had already put on like the enrollment like deposit and everything, but I just emailed the admissions office and because it was early enough, like it was fine. I was just like, I have to withdraw my enrollment. Another opportunity came up, and they're like, "Oh, okay." And that was basically that. Like it was really quite simple. But then I had to then next year, like when I was at BK, I had to apply to Dartmouth, obviously.
Hmm.
So I had to explain all this to my academic counselor at my high school, Cranbrook in Michigan. He was like, "What, Vanessa? Like this is crazy." I was like, "Yeah, I know."
Yeah, that's pretty, and obviously you went through a ton of adversity to sort of get that commitment from Dartmouth. I'm curious how you sort of handled that mental challenge of trying to figure, like knowing that schools weren't offering you, but still trying to stay committed to hockey and knowing that opportunity might come at some point when it eventually did.
Yeah, I don't know. My dad helped me a lot with that. Like we had a lot of like conversations about it and such, just about my future. And he would just tell me like, you know, wherever you're meant to be, you'll end up there. Like everything happens for a reason. And then I truly believe that. And I would still show up to practice every day, give my 100%, show up to every game, give 110%, even though like I didn't know if I was even going to play college hockey because that's just who I was. Like I'm not going to quit on something. And I genuinely did still love the game. Like the fact that I wasn't committed didn't change anything about that. Um, so and yeah, it was a huge like growing up moment for me, just like having to accept that, but then still like showing up and giving your all every day. And like sometimes that's like just life and that's what happens. And I guess it shows if you just keep doing that, you will get rewarded and you will like get what you worked for.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a really, really cool story. And want to just say that like I admire your perseverance for going through all that challenge. Obviously, the pandemic probably made it even more challenging. So just to want to say I admire that perseverance, and it's really awesome to see
Thank
that
you.
if you got something out of that. So
Thank
definitely
you.
some good advice for people to listen to on that is just never give up on some of those things because things happen for a reason, like you said.
For sure.
Now, getting back to sort of the hockey side of things, how do you balance both academics and hockey at such a high level university? Because I just found out today that Dartmouth has like the weirdest academic schedule where like you guys like have winter break like in Thanksgiving until like early January. I find that sort of, I guess I guess maybe I don't know, maybe my college is weird. I don't know. I'm just curious how you sort of balance all that out with the sort of unique academic schedule, but also balancing both hockey and academics at the same time.
Yeah, so Dartmouth does trimesters. So we have 3 10-week terms. We're one of the few schools that does it. I believe like UCLA might do it as well. But yeah, and you take 3 courses and but it's so fast paced. Like I like thought that I was pretty well prepared because the high school I went to in Michigan was like a college prep school. So like the workload was so rigorous there. I was like, oh, like college, like I'll have even more time, like it'll be okay. But it really like hits you fast, like the workload. There's like so much reading. And then just like honestly, it's nice having hockey because it's almost like a bit of a break. Like I feel like if I was just a regular student here, I'd just like be always hitting the books. Um, so I guess it's just like even though we are like doing a lot, like even more physical and mental work at hockey, just like finding it as a little break from the rigor of the academics is one thing. And then also just like finding time like for yourself throughout the day, even if it's just like 10 minutes, whether you're like scrolling through TikTok or like for me, some people make fun of me for this, but I have like an extensive skincare routine that I like to do at night, but it's just like helps me like wind down after like such a long and busy day. So I think yeah, the key to just like not going crazy is just finding those like mini vacations every day.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, at least our age, don't find time to have fun because they're always just so stressed out from school and other things. And I think it's actually a good thing to like schedule like a day or two, or maybe like an hour or two, like from your perspective, to just like do nothing and have fun, because it just takes your mind off things, and it also like just makes you sort of expand your mind a little bit and rest at the same time. I just feel like a lot of people don't really, they think it's a bad thing when I don't think it's a bad thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, what is your team's like goals and expectations for the rest of the season? And just talk about like what you want to accomplish. Obviously, it's to win an ECAC championship and make the playoffs, but I'm curious if there's any other goals your team might have on the radar that fans might not be aware of.
Um, I don't think you pretty much covered it. I think our goal is to just treat every game like it's the most important game to play. Like you said, like win some home games. We haven't won a home game yet, and I think that's like the main thing for us right now. Um, and yeah, hopefully making it to the playoffs, and then just like off the ice, I think just coming together more as a team. Um, and creating more like deeper friendships and such.
Now, let's we're now in a segment I call the non-hockey segment, where I ask you some non-hockey questions just to get to know you a little bit more off the ice as long as your teammates. So, first one, this sort of goes back to the karaoke thing, but what music do you like to listen to? Is it like pop, Justin Bieber, or is it some other stuff?
So I am a huge Swiftie, love Taylor Swift, one of her biggest fans. And annoys a lot of my friends, but I'm not ashamed of it. But I kind of like everything except this is a hot take. I don't really like country music that much. Not a
Isn't Taylor
big
Swift
country
country
music fan.
though?
I like Taylor Swift's country
All
music,
right.
like in the beginning,
Yeah.
but not like I don't know, I don't find myself listening to country music often unless I'm on like a boat in the middle of a lake. But I also like listening to like Eminem and like 90s hip hop and rap because when I was little, driving with my dad to the rink or anything or to like long like away games, like he would just be playing Eminem and 90s rap and I'd be like 8 years old just jamming out with him. So yeah. That's my
I feel like when you're
taste.
from Michigan, you have to be an Eminem fan. Like, there's just no like discussion about that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I feel like he's like not as popular anymore,
That's disappointing
obviously.
because I think he's one of the
But
best rappers of all time.
yeah, I agree. But like he does have a lot of good songs, and obviously everyone knows like Lose Yourself and like Rap God. But like his song Stan has to be probably one of my favorite songs of all time.
Yeah, I like the song When I'm Gone because it's a good story, but it's also like lyrically like really just to see like how he makes different rhyme schemes and stuff out of that song and still make a good story out of it, I think is really impressive. And then obviously I like Love the Way You Lie. Just
Oh
it's a good
yeah,
song to jam
it's a
out to.
banger. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Did you get tickets for Taylor Swift? I know she's going on tour. I know that was a big thing,
Yeah.
but I don't know if Ticketmaster screwed you over like some people got.
No, no, yeah. So um I my mom signed up on her Ticketmaster account for the like pre-sale lottery. I signed up on two different accounts, and my aunt signed up, and I was like, okay, one of us is bound to get it. And it was God, when was it? It was a Tuesday. We were playing post. We were playing post, and my aunt had received the email, and so she was working from home that day, so she was able to just like be in the waiting, like the queue line the whole day. And like I was like still in contact with her, but I was like, okay, I gotta go play a game. Ended up scoring my first NCAA goal. And then after the game, my mom was there and she was like, guess what? Your aunt got the tickets. And I was just I was doing probably one of the best days of my life right there. Um, but yeah, so I will be going to her concert. I'm very excited.
That's awesome. Were you more excited for the tickets or the goal?
Oh, that's a tough one.
I feel like the goal because
Definitely,
you have to
definitely the
work hard for
goal.
that. Yeah. Do you get to keep the
Definitely the
puck?
goal. Yeah, I did. I actually have it right here. Yeah.
Are you gonna bring it back to your house and keep it there? Is it something you're gonna sort of keep with you for your next 3 years in college?
No, I probably should have brought it home over Christmas break, honestly, because I don't want to lose it with all the clutter I have here. But I'll definitely bring it home and put it on like the mantle or something.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, that's pretty cool. How did you like score the goal? Like, do you know this, remember the sequence by any chance?
Yeah, we were checking them. Um they were just below their blue line, and um my teammate Sid Harrington like forced them to turn the puck over, and the girl was trying to go like DDD, and I think I just like literally I intercepted the puck, stick handle, and then I just shot it through the D screen and ended up scoring. So yeah.
That's a nice one because I feel like a lot of first goals are sort of like just tap-ins or like dirty, greasy goals. So that's a nice one to remember.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, what is your most embarrassing hockey moment?
Um, I forget where it was, how old I was. Like, I know it was at Little Caesars. It was some game at Little Caesars, but I stepped onto the ice with my skate guards on, and I just fell straight down, and everyone was laughing at me. Very embarrassing, and I'll never forget that.
As long as it wasn't on camera, that's all that counts.
I think someone may have pulled it up on my farm, but and it went around a group chat. But that was it. That was it. I don't think it
As long as no one else
got
is seeing it,
public.
that's all that counts. That's all
Yeah,
that counts.
for sure.
Yeah, mine was sort of like we were doing backward skating drills and like I think I was like a peewee at that point and someone forgot to close the bench door. And when I was backward skating on the blue line, I was going like 100% and like I fell into the bench. That
Oh,
was pretty
oh
tough, but
no.
luckily I bounced back up and I was definitely pretty embarrassed about that. But I remember my dad just laughing at me about it. So it was pretty funny. And then we went to a Bruins game like that night and Tim Thomas, the goalie at the time, like fell on his butt during warmups and it made me feel better about that. So
Yeah. Definitely got to be careful with the doors though. Like, glad you're okay. That can sometimes be dangerous.
yeah, it's just I was more worried about I'm glad my head didn't hit the bench because that would have been
Yeah,
bad. So luckily,
yeah,
like it
for
all worked
sure.
out. But no, definitely that's definitely like I feel like the worst injuries happened from that. So glad I'm okay from that.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about some of your teammates at Dartmouth. First one is who is the funniest teammate you have at Dartmouth?
Um, I think the funniest teammate is either my best friend Shay. And I'm not even being biased, she makes everyone laugh. Just her personality, she's just really bubbly and happy and just makes everyone smile. Or Jenna Donahue, she's a junior. She just has one of those like clown personalities and she's just so fun to be around.
Now I think you might have the best style on the team, but besides yourself,
Thank you.
who has the best pregame outfits before each game?
Um, Again, not trying to be biased, but I would either say Shay Mesner or Georgia Krause, who's a senior, and they both have very different styles. Shay she'll like wear something that like no one else could pull off, and maybe not even want to try to pull off, but she doesn't. She owns it. And then Georgia just has like one of those just like really cool styles. Like you see her and you're like, oh wow, like she's definitely super cool. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I heard Meredith Jensen has good style too.
Oh
I feel like
yeah.
she always pulls up in something unique, which I think is a good thing. I like seeing the personality off the ice as well.
Yeah, she has a bright green suit and I just love it.
That's awesome. There should be a game. I know this might be hard, but where all you guys just wear green before a game, sort of blend in with the rink a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I'll put that out there.
Now, if you could have lunch with anyone in the world, who would it be and why?
It would be Taylor Swift because I've just loved her music since I was little, and there's videos of me like singing karaoke to You Belong With Me and Love Story when I was like 6. And um I think sometimes she gets a lot of hate because she's so mainstream, but like some of her like most recent albums like have really like deep, meaningful songs, and I think she's just like a really powerful boss woman that I would love to have lunch with.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. I would think the thing I would want to ask her about is just the whole Scooter Braun stuff because I'm interested in the whole music business. I'll be interested to hear like her perspective on
Oh
it because
yeah.
I feel like Scooter talks a lot, but I haven't heard anything from Taylor.
Well, if you listen to her songs, you'll hear what she has to say in them.
That's good. Put in the music. That's a good way. I think that's a better way to express yourself sometimes. So,
Yeah.
and then last non-hockey question is, what is the most interesting thing you've read or seen this week?
Um, Actually, for one of my classes here, it's called Living with Nature. It's like this geography class, but just found out that there's these animals called pangolins, and they may have been the cause of COVID because they're like these like armadillo meets anteater type animals like in Africa, and um, but they're illegally like trafficked and like sold, and it may have been like across a like a mutated disease that they received from bats that spread in the like wet markets in Wuhan that could have caused this like whole global pandemic, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, I feel like I remember hearing something like that, but those wet markets, they're like really like gross. Like I feel like they're not sanitized, so I feel like that had something to do with it as well.
Yeah, I didn't even know what a pangolin was,
Yeah.
so I was like, oh wow, never heard this before.
Yeah, I feel like I the only time I heard about it was because of the whole COVID situation. So yeah,
Yeah.
they're definitely interesting animals. I know Arthur the aardvark. I remember not knowing anything about aardvarks until someone told me that that's what Arthur from that t kids TV show was. I thought that was cool when I was a kid.
Yeah, the aardvarks, that was actually the mascot of like the girls portion at my high school. Like it was called Cranbrook Kingswood. It used to be Cranbrook used to be the boys' school and Kingswood used to be the girls' school, and they were the aardvarks, which is kind of an unfortunate mascot. But
I like it. I think it's cool. It's unique. It's not something you see all the time. So now getting back to some hockey questions now. Obviously you have an incredible story of making it to the Division One level. So for all the younger people listening to this episode, what advice would you give them on what it takes to make it to that level where you are today?
I guess just like going back to what I said, just like wherever you're meant to end up, just trust that you will get there, but you're not going to get there by just sitting around. Like you have to keep putting in the work, you have to be resilient, you have to persevere, um, and just be like grateful for any opportunity that comes your way. So it's kind of like a mixture of just like trusting that it'll happen, but also making it happen. Like send those emails, put yourself out there. And also another thing is like don't forget about your academics because that's the other half of it. So even if you get to college for hockey, like you still have the school portion of that. So don't forget about that too.
Yeah, absolutely. I heard that like if you have to have a certain academic standard to even play, like to be
Yeah.
in the roster.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a certain like GPA that you have to meet for
Yeah,
sure.
so that always keep your academics in your mind for sure. And then obviously from your perspective, what do you think should be done to help grow women's hockey?
Um, I think just like doing like podcasts like this or like social media, excuse me, just like publicizing it more and shedding light on female hockey players and maybe finding more ways to fund youth hockey teams and showing that girls can make a career out of playing hockey. Because I feel like when like a parent puts their like son in hockey, like the son's like, "Oh, I want to be in the NHL. Like that's what I want to do with my life." And then if a parent puts their like little girl in hockey, like I feel like they don't have as many like things to aspire for, like to make a career out of for themselves through hockey. But that's not necessarily true because if you make it to D1 hockey, you have the opportunity to go to like amazing schools like Dartmouth, and even if you don't end up playing in the NHL, you can become a doctor or a lawyer, like yeah, and then you make so many connections along the way. So I feel like it's just like getting that message out there, like playing like for a girl playing hockey isn't just a hobby. It is also a lifestyle like it is for the men, and it is important for us to like build our careers and find success.
Yeah, absolutely. And I read on your Dartmouth profile that like your goal is to become a lawyer. I'm curious like how that all works out because I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, my dream is to be a lawyer. Yeah, I don't know. This sounds kind of shallow, but when I watched Legally Blonde for the first time when I was younger, and she went to Harvard Law and everything, like I was like, oh my gosh, like that's what I want to do, and I feel like it's definitely like a possibility for me, just like being able to go to Dartmouth and building these connections and having like this amazing academic um career. But I don't necessarily know what kind of lawyer I want to be
Hmm.
yet, but another dream of mine would like to find my way back to working like in the NHL or something, like maybe being like a team lawyer and building my way up to maybe like assistant GM, maybe GM. I don't know. That would be my ideal
I
goal.
could see that happening though. Would you want to be an agent? Because I know you have to go to law school to do that. And I saw that there's becoming like a lot more women in NHL like for agents, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's definitely like a potential avenue that I could go. Not really, again, not quite sure yet,
Hmm.
but I just love hockey, like love the game so much. It would be amazing if, I can make it into my career, like I was saying a few minutes ago. Um, Even though I'm not playing in the NHL, I can work for the NHL and make a name for myself regardless.
Hmm.
And the fact that more women are being represented and continue to be represented is amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. I hope like 10 years after this podcast gets released and you get hired as like the first like one of the first women assistant GMs, people can look back on this and say you sort of manifested it all. So I really hope that happens for you.
Thank you so much. I hope so too.
Now, do you have any shout outs you want to give to any of your teammates, former teammates, family members, friends, or if you want to plug something in, say something, feel free. The floor is all yours.
Um, I want to give a shout out to my mom and dad who have no idea that I'm doing this right now. Um, Shout out to my brother, who is probably my number one fan. He watches every game and he's always like texting my dad and he's just very like passionate about it and it means so much to me and I don't think he really knows that. Shout out to my little sister. Um, Mainly because she would definitely get mad if I shouted out everyone else in my family and not her. But love you, Wade. And then just a shout out to my teammates um, at Dartmouth, my teammates from Selects at Little Caesars, Honey Bake. Just uh, thank you guys as well.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Vanessa. I really appreciate your time. It means so much to myself, and I wish you and your team nothing but the best, not only for the rest of this year, but also for the rest of your collegiate career as well. And I also wish you nothing but the best for your future endeavors. And I know you're going to be successful for whatever you decide to choose. So I'm going to be rooting for you all the way. And thanks again for your time.
Thank you so much.